They laughed in our faces, snapping selfies and flashing their phones like they owned the theater. They weren't just loud, they were mocking us, flashing cameras, cackling through every scene, daring anyone to stop them. They weren't here for the film. They were here for themselves. Loud laughter, phones held high like trophies, a group of teenagers who believed the theater belonged to them. And for a moment, I thought they were going to get away with that rudeness and arrogance. Everyone thought they would. But then I realized, if they wanted the spotlight so badly, I'd give it to them. Only this time, the whole theater would watch as the show ended with them as the main act. And all it took was one whispered lie to the right person to flip their night into a public humiliation they'll never forget. If you've ever had your peace shattered by people who thought the rules didn't apply to them, you'll understand exactly why this story hits so hard. So before we dive in, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, tap like, and drop a comment about the worst time someone ruined your night out. Trust me, you're going to want to weigh in on this one because justice here isn't just served. It's served cold in front of a full audience.
My mother had gathered all the women in my family and convinced them to all wear black robes to attend my wedding, her own son's wedding, until I was forced to turn it to her own public humiliation funeral. On that faithful day, the church was packed with rows of family and friends sat waiting for the bride and groom. But instead of wedding bells, a projector flickered to life, and on the screen appeared the dark truth. Every lie, every sabotage attempt, every venomous word my mother had spat to try and destroy my marriage. And as her face turned pale, as she shrieked and lunged forward to stop it, I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the day I turned my wedding into her worst nightmare.
My name is Sam, and I'm about to tell you everything about what really happened before and on my wedding day, and how my own mother nearly turned it to my newly built family funeral. But before we dive in, if you've ever been underestimated, disrespected, or told you weren't good enough, this story is for you. Hit subscribe right now because you're about to hear how we turned a toxic mother-in-law's reign of cruelty into the sweetest, most unforgettable revenge. Like this video if you've ever wished for justice, and let's dive straight in. 7 years. That's how long my girlfriend, who has now become my wife, and I had been together when it all came to a boiling point. We were young, deeply in love, and honestly just trying to build a future together. But for 7 years, my mother, the woman I once thought might someday be happy for me to have my own family, waged a quiet, ugly war against us. And it all started with something as simple, as stupid, as the color of my girlfriend's skin. I'll never forget the day my mom first saw her picture. Up until then, she had ignored the fact that I even had a girlfriend. I thought maybe she was just giving me space. But the second she saw that photo, her face twisted. "She looks too dark," she muttered, and then said something I won't repeat here. She said words that are so ugly they made me sick. When I told her my girlfriend was Sinti, part of a proud community with roots in Germany for generations, my mom lost it. She ranted that Sinti and Roma were scam artists, gypsies, people who lied for a living. I was stunned. This was the woman who raised me? That day something broke between us, and instead of letting it go, my mom doubled down. She called my girlfriend a gold digger, said she must be after my fortune, the fortune that I don't even have as at that time. She painted her as untrustworthy, dangerous, less than human. I had to put my own mother in time out for 6 months. 6 months of silence because she couldn't stop spewing venom about the woman I loved. And every time she tried to pretend to give me a half-hearted apology, she would always ruin it by slipping in another jab. The timer reset again and again. You'd think a year of isolation might soften her heart. Instead, she sharpened her knives. She turned sneaky. She created fake Facebook profiles. One is me, one is my ex-girlfriend. She spent months faking messages, sending them back and forth, spinning the illusion of an affair. She printed screenshots and stormed into our home, waving them like holy scripture. For a moment, I saw devastation in my girlfriend's eyes. Her hands trembled. Her face went pale. My stomach dropped. I thought my mother will actually succeed in breaking us apart. But then I saw it, a fatal flaw in her plan. She'd claimed I'd taken my ex on a business trip, that we spent 4 days in bed together. But the truth is, that trip she lied about was actually the day I had whisked my girlfriend away for a surprise vacation. I had photos, receipts, and proof. The look on my mother's face when we called her out, when she realized her whole scheme had collapsed, was almost satisfying. Almost. But the damage was done. My girlfriend's trust had been tested, our peace shattered, and my mother? She earned herself another 9 months in exile. Still, she didn't stop. Subtle digs, snide comments, racist jokes slipped into conversations like poison darts. At holidays, she'd bring up every negative news story about the Sinti she could find. She wanted my girlfriend to feel small, unwanted, dirty. And then, even in all of this, we got engaged. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd see how serious we were, how permanent, that she'd realize nothing she could do could stop us. Instead, she exploded, screaming over the phone that she'd stop this wedding if it's the last thing I do. From that moment on, it wasn't just war, it was total annihilation. She sabotaged invitations by giving us fake addresses, hoping the cards would bounce back too late. She tried to cancel the flowers, the venue, even the menu. She spread rumors so vile, so convincing, that parts of my own family started to pull away. Every detail of the wedding had to be locked down with passwords because of her. And then came the final straw. The thing that turned my frustration into fury and made me realize she didn't just want to ruin the wedding. She wanted to humiliate my bride in front of everyone. Through my brother, who, God bless him, pretended to be on her side to feed us intel, we found out her plan. She had gathered all the women in my family and convinced them to wear black to the ceremony, not as a show of unity, but as a funeral. A funeral for my marriage, a public statement that this day was not joy, but mourning, that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. My blood boiled when I found out. I lay awake at night, imagining her smug face as my wife walked down the aisle, surrounded by black-clad mourners. The disgust, the shame, the whispers. And that's when the idea was born. If my mother wanted to make our wedding her theater of cruelty, then fine. We'd give her a stage. We'd give her a spotlight. And in front of everyone, we'd strip her mask away. She thought she was planning a funeral. What she didn't know was that she was walking straight into her own.
Nights turned into battlegrounds inside my own head. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word my mother had ever spat about my fiancé. Her voice became this constant, gnawing echo. She's a liar. She's a gold digger. She's not good enough. And the worst part? Sometimes, for just a split second, I'd catch myself wondering, what if? That was her power, not in the truth of her words, because there was none, but in the poison of doubt she tried to inject into every interaction, every smile, every tender moment between me and the woman I loved. But then I'd roll over, see my fiancé's face in the dim light, peaceful, trusting. I'd remember how she had stood by me when my own mother tried to destroy us with fake Facebook messages. How she hadn't given up even when every rumor, every sabotage was designed to make her feel unwanted. That memory would wash away the doubt, replace it with anger. And anger is a dangerous fuel. See, love makes you want to protect, but anger makes you want to fight back. The months leading up to the wedding were a nightmare. My fiancé was trying to hold on to the joy of planning her dream day, choosing flowers, tasting cakes, picking out a dress that made her glow. But every step forward was sabotaged by my mother. The florist called one morning, confused, and asked, "Did you really want to cancel the flowers?" The venue also left a voicemail saying, "We received a request to move the date. Can you confirm?" Even the caterer also was baffled as she called to ask, "Someone tried to swap the vegetarian menu for an all-meat feast. Is that correct?" Every time it was the same. My fiancé's smile would falter. Her shoulders would slump. I could see it, the fear creeping in, that no matter how much we fought, my mother would still find a way to ruin our day. And then the rumors began to spread. Quiet at first, whispers carried at family gatherings. My cousins, who was always warm and supportive, suddenly grew distant. My aunts stopped calling. Invitations to Sunday dinners disappeared. It was death by 1,000 cuts, and my mother was holding the blade. I remember one night my fiancé broke down. We were sitting at the kitchen table, guest list spread out, when she just buried her hands in her hands and sobbed. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. Her voice cracked, and my heart shattered. "What?" I asked gently, though I already knew. The answer would be, "Marry you, with her there, with all of them there. It's supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and she's turning it into a nightmare." I grabbed her hands, squeezed them so tight she had to look at me. "Hey, this is our day, not hers, not anyone else's. I don't care if the whole damn family shows up in black. I'm marrying you. That's all that matters." She nodded, but the tears kept falling. And deep inside me, something hardened. It wasn't enough to just survive my mother's sabotage. It wasn't enough to scrape by and hope she didn't ruin everything. No, I wanted her to feel what she had made us feel. The sleepless nights, the fear, the humiliation. But we weren't ready yet. Revenge can't be rushed. It has to be crafted, meticulous, precise. And then, like a gift, my brother called. He'd been playing double agent for months, pretending to be on my mother's side, feeding us her plots while keeping her trust. His voice was low, urgent. "She's planning something big," he said. "What now?" I sighed, exhausted. "She's telling all the women in the family to wear black, funeral black. They're going to treat the wedding like a wake, like your marriage is a death sentence." Silence stretched between us. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. "You're sure?" I asked. "Positive. I saw the messages myself." I hung up the phone and sat there numb. My fiancé looked at me, concerned. "What is it?" I told her. Every word. And as I spoke, her expression changed, not to fear, not to sadness, but to something sharper. Her eyes narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we give them a funeral." It was the first time I'd seen her fight back, and damn, it lit a fire in me.
That night, we started planning. We spread papers across the table, drew timelines, listed every one of my mother's sabotages, every voicemail, every rumor, every failed attempt to destroy us. We had evidence, so much evidence, and we were going to use it. The plan wasn't just to survive the wedding. It was to take everything my mother had done, every secret she had whispered, and shine a light so bright she couldn't hide. If she wanted to make our wedding her stage, we'd let her. But she wouldn't be the star. She'd be the villain exposed, stripped bare in front of everyone she had manipulated. We had 4 months to prepare, 4 months to gather evidence, 4 months to set the trap.
Something shifted inside both of us that night. We weren't just victims anymore, scrambling to defend ourselves against my mother's constant attacks. For the first time, we were on the offensive. The first step was simple: gather proof. My brother became our shadow informant, slipping us recordings, screenshots, and whispered updates whenever my mother hatched a new scheme. He was good, better than I ever expected. He knew how to act outraged on her behalf, to nod along while she spewed venom, all while hitting record on his phone, or saving another incriminating message. The florist gave us a voicemail of her pretending to be my fiancée, clumsy in her imitation, but dripping with arrogance. "Yes, this is the bride," she said, voice pitched just enough to sound fake. "Cancel the flowers, we don't need them." Anyone who knew her could tell it wasn't her voice. It was so sloppy, it was almost insulting. The caterer had a similar story. Emails from her demanding changes to the menu, even threatening to pull the booking if they didn't comply. The venue manager confirmed she'd tried to shift the date, spinning a tale about a family emergency. Every piece was another nail in the coffin of her credibility. But the crown jewel came from my brother. He had secretly installed a piece of software on her computer, spyware that recorded Skype calls, saved emails, logged keystrokes. Risky, yes, but he was committed, and what it captured was devastating. Hours of conversations where she trashed my fiancé, where she told family members we were rushing into marriage, that my fiancé was only after money, that she was lazy, untrustworthy, a stain on our family name. Lies stacked on lies, dripping with venom. When we played back the first recording, my stomach turned. Hearing her speak that way, about the woman I loved, cut deeper than I expected. But then I looked at my fiancé, and instead of pain, I saw resolve. She leaned forward, hit the replay button, and whispered, "Perfect. We'll use this." From that moment, it wasn't just planning a wedding anymore. It was planning an exposé. We started cataloging everything: dates, times, recordings. We built a highlight reel, a damning montage that would leave no room for excuses, no cracks for denial to slip through. But we knew evidence wouldn't be enough. We needed a stage, an event so powerful, so unforgettable, that it would destroy the narrative she had been weaving for years. So we turned to my fiancé's parents. Her father, calm but firm, listened to our plan without interrupting. When we finished, he leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "You want to show this to everyone at the wedding?" "Yes," I said. "We want her lies exposed, not whispered about, not denied, exposed." He nodded slowly, then smiled. "Good, because she's been playing games long enough. Let's help you make it perfect." Together we refined the plan. During the ceremony, before the vows, the guests would be told there was a short delay. While they waited, a DVD would play. Just a few minutes long, but long enough to obliterate any illusions my mother had built. We didn't tell the whole family. Only my fiancé's side knew in advance. They swore to secrecy, playing their parts perfectly,
smiling and chatting with my relatives as if nothing was wrong. Behind the scenes, though, every detail was locked down. The projector tested, the sound checked, the recording edited for maximum impact. We even planned for her reaction. We knew she'd try to stop it, to scream or storm the aisle. So we arranged for 3 quiet, unassuming men, friends of her father, to sit strategically near her. If she tried anything, they'd intercept, calm but firm, and return her to her seat. It was a trap with no escape. But even as we planned, the pressure built. At night, I'd lie awake again, not with doubt this time, but with anticipation. What if she found out? What if she sensed the setup? What if the video malfunctioned? And yet there was a thrill, too. The thought of her face when the evidence rolled, the gasp of the crowd, the weight of years of venom finally being lifted. Every rehearsal in my head ended the same way, her exposed, humiliated, stripped of power. And as the days ticked closer, one thought pulsed in my chest like a drumbeat. This isn't just a wedding anymore. This is justice.
The morning of the wedding didn't feel real. My fiancée looked radiant in her gown, but beneath her smile, I could see the steel in her eyes. We weren't walking into a celebration. We were walking into a battlefield. As we arrived at the church, I scanned the crowd. Sure enough, there they were, rows of my relatives, dressed head to toe in black. It was almost theatrical, the way they filed in like mourners at a funeral. Their faces were somber, smug, as if they believed they were making some kind of statement. My jaw tightened, but I didn't say a word. Let them think they'd won. In a few minutes, the curtain would rise and the show would begin. Guests settled into their seats, the low hum of conversation echoing against the high vaulted ceilings. Then came the announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, there will be a short delay before the ceremony begins. In the meantime, please direct your attention to the screen. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. The projector whirred and the first image flickered to life. It was the florist, his voice calm but incredulous, recounting how someone had called pretending to be the bride, trying to cancel all the flowers. Then came the voicemail, my mother's voice, unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the pews. People shifted uncomfortably, side-eyeing her. Next came the caterer on screen. He explained the bizarre requests, the attempt to swap the carefully chosen menu for something that would have excluded half of the bride's family. He showed the emails, signed with my fiancé's name, but traced back to my mother's address. I glanced at her. She was frozen, lips pressed tight, eyes darting around as whispers grew louder. And then came the recordings. My brother's compilation began to play, her voice filling the church. She mocked my fiancé, calling her a scam artist. She lied, saying she'd caught me cheating. She laughed about how gullible the rest of the family was for believing her stories. Every word was venom, and every word was undeniable. That's when she broke. She shot up from her seat, screeching, "That's not true! That's taken out of context! Stop this right now!" She lunged down the aisle towards the projector, wild-eyed, arms flailing. But before she got 10 steps, the 3 men we'd planted rose smoothly from their seats. They intercepted her without a word, forming a wall of calm authority. "Sit down, or we'll escort you out." She fought, thrashing like a child, but they didn't budge. Finally, defeated, she collapsed back into the pew, seething, her face red with fury. The video rolled on for another 3 minutes, each second driving the knife deeper. By the time the lights came back on, the room was heavy with silence. My mother sat there, trembling, while every eye in the church bored into her. And then my fiancé's father rose. He walked slowly to the altar, his presence commanding the room. His voice, when he spoke, was steady and clear. "Our daughter has tried for years to build a relationship with this family. She has been met with cruelty, with lies, with sabotage.
Today was supposed to be her wedding day. But how can there be a wedding when the groom's own family conspires to destroy it? A murmur ran through the crowd. My mother shifted uncomfortably, but no one came to her defense. He continued, "Months ago, the couple decided they would not give you that power. They married in secret, surrounded only by love and support. Today was never their wedding. Today was your reckoning." A gasp followed. My relatives stared at each other, stunned, realizing they had been duped. The black clothes that were meant as an insult now looked like costumes in a tragic play. My fiancé's father's eyes swept the room, hard as steel. "The bride and groom are already on their honeymoon. They will not return for 4 weeks, and when they do, they will have no contact with this side of the family for 1 year. After that, they may reconsider, but only if you reflect on your actions and change your ways. If not, they are prepared to cut ties permanently." The silence was suffocating. My mother's face twisted into a mask of rage, but she couldn't speak, not with every person around her staring, judging, seeing her for what she truly was. I almost pitied her. Almost. But as I imagined her plotting, scheming, confident she would ruin our wedding, and then being outplayed in front of everyone she tried to manipulate, no, there was no pity. There was only satisfaction. Our plan had worked. She wanted a funeral, and we gave her one. The funeral of her lies, her power, her control. And in that moment, justice had never tasted sweeter.
The silence after my fiancé's father's speech was deafening. A silence so thick you could feel it pressing down on your chest, demanding to be broken, but nobody dared move. Nobody except my mother. Her face was twisted, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the pew so hard her knuckles turned white. She opened her mouth once, twice, as if searching for words, but none came. For the first time in years, she had no weapon. No lie, no scheme, no scapegoat, only the evidence of her own cruelty replaying in everyone's minds. And then the eyes began to turn. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, people who had believed her whispers, who had dressed in black as her silent army, looked at her not with sympathy, but with disgust. Some shook their heads. Others avoided her gaze entirely, ashamed of what they had been complicit in. She sat there isolated, exposed, drowning in the silence she had created. It was everything she had tried to inflict on my fiancé. Now, it was hers to carry. When the service was dismissed, people filed out quietly, avoiding her. My father tried to put a hand on her shoulder, but she jerked away, humiliated. The women who had shown up in black left hurriedly, muttering excuses, their so-called statement, now a mark of their gullibility. And me? I wasn't even there. That was the beauty of it. While she burned under the weight of her lies, while my family sat in stunned silence, I was thousands of miles away, standing on a beach with the woman I loved, watching the waves roll in. Married, free, untouchable. When the news reached us, texts from my brother, who had gleefully reported every detail, we didn't celebrate loudly. We didn't gloat. We sat together, hand in hand, and let the weight lift off our shoulders. For the first time in years, we could breathe. Justice isn't always about shouting your victory. Sometimes it's about quiet peace, knowing the war's over, and you won. But the fallout didn't stop there. Weeks later, after we returned from our honeymoon, messages trickled in. Sheepish apologies from cousins who admitted they'd been manipulated, aunts who confessed my mother had poisoned them with lies, uncles who admitted they should have known better. Slowly, they began to see her for who she really was, a master manipulator who thrived on control. And the proof? They had heard it with their own ears. My brother, armed with recordings and evidence, helped peel back the layers for those still clinging to denial. Each new revelation chipped away at the myth of the devoted, misunderstood mother. By the end, she was a pariah. 80% of the family turned their backs on her completely. Her throne of influence crumbled. And me? I made good on the promise. 1 year of silence. No calls, no texts, no visits. Every time she tried to reach out, we reset the clock to 0. It was strict, it was cold, but it was necessary. Boundaries forged in fire. When that year ended, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd use the time to reflect, to apologize, to change. But she never did. Pride wouldn't let her. And so, she remains cut off, a ghost on the edge of family gatherings, a woman whispered about, but never welcomed. Her punishment wasn't prison. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. It was worse. It was irrelevance. She had wanted to control everything, my marriage, my happiness, my future, and in the end, she lost it all. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone's life. Sometimes it's about showing them that without you, without their control, their power means nothing. And that's exactly what we did.
Looking back now, years later, I realized something important. Revenge isn't always about striking back in the heat of the moment. It isn't about shouting louder or stooping to their level. Real revenge is patience. It's control. It's waiting until the right moment, when the truth can't be denied and letting reality do the cutting. My mother thought she could define my life. She thought she could poison my relationship, sabotage my wedding, and still stand at the center of attention, smug and untouchable. Instead, she got what she feared most: exposure. Her lies stripped bare, her control shattered, her influence destroyed. And the sweetest part? We didn't even have to raise our voices. We let her own words bury her. That's the kind of justice people rarely get to see. Not the cinematic, explosive kind, but the kind that reshapes everything quietly, permanently. The kind that turns the villain into a ghost of their former self. And for us, it gave something priceless: peace. A marriage built not on fear or compromise, but on strength, on the knowledge that together we could endure anything, even the storm of my mother's cruelty, and still come out stronger. It taught me something too. Sometimes the people closest to you will try the hardest to control you. Sometimes the battles we fight aren't against strangers, but against family, against blood. And in those moments, you have to choose: let them rule you or reclaim your power. We chose power. We chose love. And in the end, that was the ultimate revenge. If you've ever had someone underestimate you, try to sabotage you, or make you feel small, then you know how good it feels to see justice served. So here's what I want you to do. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this story. Drop a comment below if you've ever had a toxic family member or someone in your life you had to cut off. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories where justice isn't just served, it's crafted and narrated. Because sometimes the sweetest victories are the quietest ones.